Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Gratitude Shift Wednesday. It is Gratitude Shift Wednesday, and we're talking about guilt this morning. We're talking about guilt, letting go, letting go of guilt this morning. That is what we're talking about. We know that today is about what? Overcoming obstacles, right? Opportunity cost. And today's title is letting go of guilt. Listen, you're allowed to grow. You're allowed to grow. So stop shrinking to be digestible, okay? Letting go doesn't make you ungrateful, all right? It makes you ready, okay? It makes you ready, and you don't have to apologize for becoming, all right? So I have a question for you. Are you shrinking your success to avoid someone else's discomfort? Let's talk about it. Are you shrinking your success to avoid someone else's discomfort? It's Gratitude Shift Wednesday. All right. And I want you to know that you don't have to apologize for what? For becoming. And today's life lesson is a personal one, you guys. It's a personal because too many of us are still shrinking our success, silencing our joy, and second guessing our glow, right? To keep other people comfortable. But here's your reminder. Guilt is not proof of humility, you guys. It's a signal that your inner worth is bumping up against someone else's comfort zone. That's all it is, right? That your worth is bumping up against someone else's comfort zone. So you are allowed to grow without guilt, all right? You're allowed to be the first without apologizing, and you're allowed to break cycles without having to explain yourself. All right. So it's Gratitude Shift Wednesday. Letting go of the guilt of growing, you guys. Letting go of the guilt of growing. I know that they had that series, Survival's Remorse is Real. All right. Drop a heart in the chat if you've experienced it, right? Like you the first, you first generation graduate, you're the first to really stabilize your income. You're the first in your family to do a lot of things, and it comes with the heaviness and it comes with the cost, right? And a lot of people don't talk about that cost, but we're going to talk about it this morning as we talk about rise, right? Really embracing, because from the outside looking in, people can think, oh, you're successful and want your life, right? But a lot of times people are not thinking about or really thinking about the heaviness that comes from the inside out, right? Of what it's costing you from the inside out. And so on today, that opportunity cost that you've taken, right, to really change the trajectory of the experiences that you're having, right, that your kids are having, right, that just your friends are having, right, at the expense of a lot, all right. And we're talking about that, how to relieve this guilt on this morning. So good morning, good morning, good morning. Listen, let go of the guilt. You don't have to apologize for becoming. You are allowed to grow, all right. All right, you're allowed to grow. So again, I'm gonna ask the question: are you shrinking to stay digestible? It's time to stretch. All right, so let's breathe and own your bold, okay? All right, so are you shrinking to avoid someone else's discomfort? All right, why this session? Really to help you stop apologizing for your evolution. Evolution is inevitable. All right, that desiring you to grow, to change, to expand, to stand tall, to change, right? You don't have to apologize for that. And all too often, other people's comfort zone or other people um uncomfortableness made you feel like you had to apologize or probably not even step into it, right? Gracefully, as if you are doing something wrong. And today, we're just going to be unapologetic about that, all right? Guilt isn't a requirement for growth, all right? You don't, or you're not wrong for being the first, for saying no, or for choosing peace over performance, you guys, all right? So here's the disclaimer. This session won't silence the guilt at all, right? It's a part of it, but it will teach you how to see it differently, all right? I think that a lot of my clients that I work with, which are high performing, high functioning, emotionally intelligent, men and women, right, who have a lot to offer their friends, their family, their loved ones, are really ready to throw the towel in, right? They're dealing with some ailments, right? They're ready to like leave their husbands and their wives and just walk away, right? And so we have to really talk about like what's really going on and what is this weight that they're carrying. Good morning, brother. All right, what's that weight that they're carrying, right? So again, we know that real transformation happens when you stop internalizing the discomfort of others as your personal limitation. All right, I know that that has been woven into our culture, right? We're such a community, and we've been taught to like absorb one another's burdens, right, in our community, and it's a part of that is community, that is tribal, all right? But it's a part of it that doesn't really belong to us, and it's a part of it that we just have to see different, all right? Remember, I talked about it's not I talk about emotions as being digestible, all right? And so sometimes we have this emotion on us because we haven't digested it. It's kind of like eating a steak, like you haven't chewed it up, right? So it's still sitting there, un un uneaten. All right. So today we're going to chew it, right? We're gonna make it edible. All right. So the guilt is there, it's going to come, right? But how do I look at it differently where I can actually consume it, right? And let it digest through me and accept it, and versus build resentment around it, resist it, or even allow it to continue to shift how I move. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat. Listen, growth needs space, and you deserve to take up as much space as you need in this life, in this world. Okay. All right. All right. So let's take a deep breath. All right. So let's breathe in. All right. All right. You're not behind. You are becoming. All right. This is your space. All right. This is your space. No judgment. Right. Just your presence. We've gotten together in our personal life, done some things, probably even got together as a community, right, at your job. And now we're getting together for this life lesson, before we move forward with the rest of our day. All right. Feeling our feet on the floor. All right. Feeling our feet on the floor, up our legs, butts in the seat if we're laying down, right? Just body in the bed. We're sitting at our desk, just sitting down, feeling our butts. All right, up our spine, just activating all of the nerves in our spine, right? Just getting present in the body, up our necks, down our shoulders, activating our hands. All right, up our chins, our face. All right, just getting present in our body, letting our body know we love it. All right, we have some compassion for it this morning. All right, on this morning. All right, just breathing in, feeling the biggest organ in our body, which is our skin, thanking it. All right, if we're feeling a little tight, just kind of pushing out, breathing in acceptance. Okay, breathing out any resistance. All right, breathing in acceptance on this day, embracing, right, and breathing out resistance. All right, drop a word in the chat. Let me know how you're feeling this morning. How are you feeling this morning? I'm feeling grateful, so grateful on this morning. I'm grateful to have this conversation. Again, I say it's personal, and it's not just personal because it's something that I had to endeavor. I think it's personal because this is the work I do, right? I talk about how to make lemonade out of your lemons, right? And a lot of individuals that I work with really suffer from this lemons condition, right? They lack the energy, the motivation, organizational skills, necessary supports, and skill sets to really align, advance, and accelerate their life. In this lemons condition, it can come from a lot of things, but one of them is really just kind of being this first generation person, right? The first, right? The first to own a business, the first to get the degree, the high performer, the high functioning individual, right? Also the individual who, is taking care of mom and taking care of their kids, right? So it's a lot of elements that really affect this individual who has what I call this lemons condition. And so the whole Stop It Now framework was really created to help that individual, right, create lemonade with this lemons condition. So I'm excited about this conversation. So good morning. If you're new here, I am Dr. Sheila Little, the creator of the Stop and Now framework. You're at Life Lessons, and Life Lessons is a part of the Project Life initiative. And Project Life is where we turn theory into practice. Okay, so who is today's session for? Today's session is for you. If you've been growing but feeling guilty about it. All right. If you're afraid of your evolution, or you're afraid your evolution will cost you your connection with others, and if you're tired of really carrying the weight of their comfort, all right, you're tired of carrying the weight of their comfort. So we know that this week we're talking about embrace, all right, but embrace is not just about insight, you guys, it's about embodying, all right. So this week really invites you to stop rehearsing, okay, what was, and start really living the part of you that wants to become. So it's all about integration, right? Taking this mindset shift from earlier this month when we talked about recognition and inspiration, right? And really embracing. I say that the first part of healing is what? Acceptance, right? Accepting pretty much everything that has happened to you, right? And so that's why you go to therapy or whatever, to kind of get an inventory. It reminds me of if you're trying to go somewhere, right? You put your destination in MapQuest, or you put the destination in. You've probably heard this analogy before, and the map is going to say, so where are you, right? So it can give you the right direction from where you currently are, because you can put the destination in like, hey, I want to get to Atlanta, but to get to Atlanta from Florida and to get to Atlanta from Michigan is two different destinations, right? It's two different ways to get to Atlanta from Florida, right? And from Michigan. So I need to know where you're at. That's what the map is asking. And so a part of embracing is really saying, hey, this is where I'm at. All right. And we don't need to judge that. It's just where I'm at. Okay. And so this whole week is about embracing, and embracing is a part of rise, right? And rising is really about elevating your mindset. All right. Elevating your mindset. All right. So on day one, we talked about you're not who you were, and that's okay, right? So we're embracing the fact that you're not who you were. All right. You're not the 17, the 14, the 4-year-old, the 20-year-old that you were, right? So outgrowing roles and expectation and outdated identity, we can do that. We have to give ourselves permission to do that, right? So you've begun, we started this week really facing that truth, that you changed, that you've evolved, right? And so we can sit in that. You're no longer able to fit in that old mold, whether it's your friendships, whether it's those family roles, or even those beliefs. And if you've been with me since we started the project, a lot of those beliefs have probably shifted, right? All right. But with the awareness often comes some emotional residue. All right. So with the awareness that I've changed and I'm shifting, it comes some residue of what? Of grief, of fear, and of guilt. And that is a big reason for getting the support, right? For elevate mindset. Yes. So that is a big reason for getting what? Getting the support, making sure that you're in a community, because as you start to change, as you start to transform, this grief and this fear and this guilt starts to come up, the residue of that. All right. And so I think that when we see people changing, we think that this new thing is going to happen and I'm going to feel happy. And it's like, no, actually, happiness is probably like the third emotion, right? It's the emotion you sit in after like the grief and the guilt and all of that stuff kind of comes up. All right. All right. So letting go of who you were isn't just a mindset shift. It's actually an emotional reckoning, you guys. All right. It's actually emotional reckoning. And so on yesterday, we talked about the fear of expansion. So on day one, it was about permission. Permission of what? To change. All right. Yesterday, we talked about the fear of expansion, right? Which was the final resistance. All right. We focused on the tension between wanting more and fearing it. All right. So we know about this fear of success, right? We talk about this fear of failure, but nobody really talks about the fear of expanding, right? Right. How does it feel when, I'm getting more, or guess what? They just call my name. It's like kind of, good morning, Miss Jackie. Do you know how, it reminds me of, you ever watched, what's that show, The Lottery or whatever, where what is his name, brother? So they hit the lottery anyway, and so the numbers came, right, and they was playing the numbers, and it was their number, right, and so they got excited, but they lived in the hood. So instantly they got scared, right? So they had to hide the ticket, right? It kind of reminds me of that. Like they got excited, but immediately they got scared because what? They felt like somebody was going to try to rob them. All right. So there is this immediate fear that sometimes come with expansion that is often not talked about. All right. And we talked about that yesterday. So we confronted the fear of visibility, of leadership, and of being fully seen. And sometimes it's not as big as lottery. Okay. It's not as big as lottery. Sometimes it's being seen in your relationship. So a lot of people are not intimately connecting at the levels that they want to connect, right? We're hopeless romantics. We want to be seen, we want to be loved, right? But we don't want to be exposed, right? So we don't want to be truly seen from fear of being judged or being rejected. All right. So this fear of expansion, right? This final, I'm on a cup, right? I'm on the edge, right? There's some resistance to that. And so this guilt is often the emotional manifestation of fear. All right. So day two really exposed that fear. All right. And looking at expansion, so expansion feels good in theory, but the risk of it, right? But it's risky a lot of times in real life. And so today we're talking about letting go of the guilt of growing. All right. So all embracing is all about, okay, I'm gonna give myself permission to change. I know that there's going to be some fear with that. And then there's going to be some guilt. All right. And so today we're talking about that guilt, the cost of staying small to avoid discomfort in other people. And a lot of times in yourself. Listen, the opportunity cost of minimizing yourself financially, relationally, and a lot of times spiritually, and starting to recognize that growth isn't selfish. That's sacred, you guys. So today's lesson really builds directly on this, really moving from awareness of guilt into action. Okay. Letting go to become what? The divine person you was created to be, and what more emotionally disciplined. It's about learning to feel peace. All right. Feel peace, not pressure, when choosing self expansion, right? When choosing this expansion of self. All right. All right. So today's lesson is about three things. Your growth is valid, even if it isn't visible to others yet. Your guilt is not a signal to stop, you guys, but is a wound to be healed. All right. It's not a signal to stop. It is a wound to be healed. And your expansion is evident in your alignment. Okay. In you cannot abandon it. All right. All right. So your expansion is evidence of your alignment, and we cannot self abandon. All right. We cannot self abandon. All right. So here's our powerful quote for today. Your growth isn't betrayal. All right. It's obedience. This is the season of obedience. If you haven't really felt that, it's like, oh, this is a season of doing what I say I'm going to do, kind of following this discernment, right? So growth isn't betrayal, right? One is it's just being obedient. How do we know it's being obedient? Because everything grows, right? In nature, the natural progression is to grow. All right. So your growth isn't betrayal, you guys. It's obedience. So let's normalize. Let's start normalizing expansion without trying to explain. You don't explain the grass when it grows, right? You ain't wondering like, why is that grass growing like that? Okay. You're not explaining that, or why the trees or the leaves, grow. We understand that that's a part of evolution. But in some reason, when we grow, right? It's as if we have to explain why we're growing, while we're seeking out different ways to see and heal, right? And we don't have to explain because it's just the natural part of evolution, all right? So our core lesson is that growth often looks like outgrowing roles, right? Expectations and relationships. All right. But what many people silently carry is the guilt that follows that. All right. Guilt of having more, guilt of changing, and guilt of becoming. All right. But guilt is not a sign that you're doing something wrong in this case. All right. It's a sign that you're doing something different. All right. All right. If that makes sense, put a one in the chat. It's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something different. Okay. You're not abandoning All right. You're not abandoning the people. All right. When you're growing, you're actually answering a call. All right. You're answering a call. All right. So shrinking won't soothe anyone in this case, right? It'll only suffocate your joy. All right. So shrinking won't soothe anyone. All right. It won't even soothe the people who are seeking comfort from you, but it will suffocate your joy. And here's the thing, so many of us wonder why we are not joy filled. And it's because we're suffocating our joy because we won't allow ourselves to expand and grow and experience growth unapologetically. All right, unapologetically. All right, so the real focus for today is our income shift. All right, I'm allowed to earn more income than my family has ever earned, right? Than my spouse may earn, than my mother has earned, than my father has earned, than my mate has earned, than my friend. I'm allowed to earn more income. And there is this conversation around, Black women making more money than our Black males. So it's like this, should we apologize for that, or Black women being more educated than our Black males, right? And so there's this sense of like, am I doing something wrong for seeking expansion in my life? You're not. You're not at all. Okay. And the truth be told, that there are Black men out here doing very well for themselves as well. All right. We're just not talking about it because it's a narrative that's just being placed in social media, right? So we don't have to apologize for it. Relationship changes is another real focus. All right. You were loyal. All right. So they were loyal, but am I wrong for needing more? All right. So even though these people were loyal to me, I'm realizing I need more. I need a little bit more support, right? I need a little bit more affirming. I need a little bit more conversations around certain topics, right? So even though you were loyal in some areas in my relationships, I need more, right? And so sometimes that can create this guilt. I want to talk about finances a little more. I want to talk about love. I want to talk about travel. I want to talk about different things. I'm realizing in my growth and as I'm expanding that my need is more than what this relationship that has been in my life for 23, 25, 3, 5, 7 years, right, can contain. And there's some guilt that comes with that. And I'm just saying that's okay. All right. And then breaking cycles. They call me the strong one, but I'm not okay carrying it all anymore. All right. So a lot of us have been known as being the strong one. And guess what? We don't want that title no more. I don't want you to call me and ask me, can you borrow the $20 or the $100? I just don't want to be the strong one. All right. Call somebody else. Right. And there's a level of guilt that comes with that. All right. I want to focus on me. All right. I want to focus on my needs. Right. We serve the same God. I always tell people at this point in my life, we serve the same God. All right. So the same God that's going to take care of me, the same God going to take care of you. Let's get in agreement about this prayer because I want that for you. Okay. Please let it be known that the thing you want from me is I want it for you. I don't have to say, why you smoking them cigarettes or why you get, I don't even have to judge your vice at this point. I want the vice for you. So we can get an agreement with that. I just don't have to provide the resource for it. All right. And I'm 100%. And even if it's not a vice, right? Whatever it is, I want to be able to give from my overflow. All right. And yeah, and from a place of that I want to give from. All right. All right. So I want that for you. I'm gonna get in agreement with you and having that thing. All right. But here's the thing: I don't want to be the strong one anymore. Right. I want to be able to call and get support. Right. I want to be the one who can say, hey, can you come help me? Right. Right. So that can bring up a little guilt. That makes sense. Put a one in the chat for me. All right. All right. So today's focus. Maybe you're earning more, setting boundaries and breaking cycles. All right. And it's making others feel uncomfortable, but shrinking doesn't protect them. All right. It doesn't protect them. It only punishes you. All right. It only punishes you. So here's our heart check in. Where have you been dimming your success? All right. Where have you been dimming your success or joy because you're afraid someone else couldn't handle it? All right. So where have you been dimming your success or your joy because you're afraid that someone else couldn't handle it? All right. All right. So I want to talk about letting go of guilt for growing. All right. All right, because this sits in a deep intersection of emotional identity, generational patterns, and really personal expansion. All right. So, number one, guilt is a symptom of emotional loyalty. All right. And if you know anything about yourself, right, as a culture, as a race, and as a gender, a lot of times, and I would say I've seen a lot of men too that are loyal by default. All right. But if you're actually a high performer, right, most high performers experience guilt when they begin to exceed the emotional, financial, or spiritual boundaries of their upbringing and environment. Let me say that again. So many high performers experience guilt when they begin to exceed the emotional, the financial, and spiritual boundaries of their upbringing or environment. Guilt isn't always a sign of wrongdoing, you guys. Sometimes it's a signal that you're leaving an identity or relationship that was once a survival strategy. All right. So sometimes guilt is your body recognizing, like, hey, we're leaving our comfort zone. All right. We're leaving our comfort zone. So guilt is a feeling, not a moral compass. And sometimes we can use guilt as a moral compass, and it's not. All right. It is not always telling you the truth. It's often reflecting loss of or fear of loss or rejection. All right. So it's a feeling and not a moral compass. And I think that's what we have to understand and get right. Okay. That 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 guilt is not our moral compass. It is a feeling. And often it is a feeling that is associated when I have stepped out of my comfort zone. Out of, I used to say yes, yes, yes. Now I say no. When I say no, I feel guilty for saying no. Now I'm interpreting that as a value or a moral compass, and it's not a moral compass. It is because I did something different. My body recognized that and I feel that. Okay. That's what that means. All right. So guilt is a symptom of emotional loyalty. I was emotionally loyal to the yes. I said no now, right? And so I feel guilty for that. So guilt is a feeling, not a moral compass. All right. Listen, joy is a discipline, not just a feeling. All right. So some people are more comfortable with hard work, with pressure and sacrifice than with receiving. Hear me, with receiving, with resting, and with celebrating. All right. Um, Here's the thing. I'm asking you to receive joy without guilt. All right, which for some people feels irresponsible. All right. It feels irresponsible, but joy is not a luxury, you guys. It's a vital sign of your divine health. All right. All right. So if joy feels unsafe, it's not because it's wrong, it's because it's unfamiliar. Do you know how often people feel guilty about feeling happy and feeling fulfilled and feeling joy? Right? Because they've been programmed, right? Because you've been programmed to what? To work hard, to uh to work hard, to pressure, to sacrifice, right? And the feeling of vulnerability is associated with receiving, with resting, and with celebrating. And so a lot of times, a lot of my clients are not celebrating their wins, they're not resting, and they're not in receptive mode. And when they are, there's a sense of guilt associated to it. All right. And we have to change that. All right. Number three, success trauma is real. All right. So a lot of people who carry emotional and generational weight being the first to graduate, the first to earn, the first to break cycles, often experience success trauma. All right. And what is success trauma? The fear that their success will isolate them, will disrupt the relationships, or will disconnect them from their past. All right. Listen, you don't have to choose between belonging and becoming. All right. This thing that's in you is in you. All right. You can become that. All right. So you don't have to choose. You can live in the and, the A and D. You don't have to live in the but. And a lot of us are made to feel like we have to choose either or. And you don't have to choose the either or. You can live in the and. I can have this and that. Okay. All right. All right. If that makes sense, put a 3 in the chat for me. Number 4, boundaries. Listen, boundaries aren't betrayal, you guys. They're not betrayal, but boundaries are for you. All right. They're not for other people. All right. So this week is to affirm that a part of protecting your peace and energy is not selfish. All right. It is divine. It is your divine right. So you have to learn how to release the guilt. All right. You have to learn how to release the guilt that really allows you to set healthy boundaries without the emotional backlash and confusion from yourself. We have to really understand the difference between boundaries and emotional walls. All right. Because a lot of times we're saying, hey, this is my boundary. I need you to respect it. Right. And then the person still calls after 10 or still makes the request. And then you put a wall up like, oh, you're disrespecting my boundary, you know, and then we cut them off. And that's not what a boundary is. The boundary is for you to say, to not pick up the phone, right? When they call after 10 or 9 or 7, just, oh, I see the phone. Like, I'm not going to pick it up because I said I don't pick up the phone after. The boundary is for you, all right? It's not for them. And it's for you to communicate that, all right? And that is where the work is. That is where the emotional work is for you. But a lot of times, because we don't want to feel that work or do that heavy lifting, right? And we require the other people to. So I just want to be able to communicate to you. Don't call my phone after 8. That's my new boundary. And then now this person is supposed to automatically acquiesce to my request. Like, that is not a boundary, right? And then once they call me after 8, then they're disrespectful. And now I'm just going to block them. Like, no, they still want what they want, right? I again, a boundary is like a bouncer. You're the bouncer in the club, right? I give this example a lot. The club is jumping, right? The people outside the club, they want to get in. The club can only hold 200 people. The club is at capacity. Do you think that the club being at capacity is stopping the people on the outside from wanting to get in? No, it's not. But the bouncer is the boundary. The bouncer is saying, hey, we can't let anybody else in. But guess what? Them people like, hey, I'll pay you $500 to get in the club. And that bouncer like, no. But the bouncer is not mad at the person for wanting to pay the $500. The bouncer probably is getting a little enticed, like $500 for real, you know, right? Right. But the bouncer's job is to what? Make sure that nobody else gets in the club once it's to capacity. And that is your job, right? When you set your capacity for whatever that is, if it's your emotional capacity, your financial capacity, your mental capacity, your spiritual capacity, once you say that this is my capacity and you create that boundary, then that boundary serves as your bouncer and you communicate that when you're at capacity. All right. If that makes sense, put a 4 in the chat. So I want you to know that a boundary is not betrayal. All right. Number 5, discomfort doesn't mean that you're doing wrong. All right. I want you to know that when you grow, others may react. Okay. Others may react to your growth. They may withdraw, they may criticize, they may even guilt trip you. All right. But I need you to know that this doesn't mean that you should stop. All right. This doesn't mean that you should stop. It means that you're changing. All right. And change activates what? It activates discomfort, you guys. Discomfort in who? To the people that do the owe you. Okay. That's it. Just how you don't like change, just how your mind, remember we talk about triggers, says, hey, something's changing, and it creates like this red flag moment. The same thing happens with people. When you start to change and evolve, if they knew you as A, and now you come in as B, they don't recognize B. All right. And so they're trying to get A back. So a lot of times we can't take it personal, all right? Their withdrawal, their criticism, and their guilt trip, because they just trying to get you back to A, right? Because A is what their mind was comfortable with, right? And that's why, 1, you can't take it personal. And 2, it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong, all right? It means that you're changing, and changing activates, okay, discomfort, all right? And then last but not least, I got a couple of more. All right. Number 6, you don't owe anyone. You're shrinking. All right. Your evolution isn't something to hide or apologize for. All right. Um, you need to hear that your generosity, all right, that you can be generous. You can be generous and still have boundaries. All right. And I think that that's the one thing that we confuse, because I think that we have, we think to have boundaries in some way, we have to be mean, but you can be kind and still be assertive, you guys. All right. You can be loving and still be expansive. It is a skill, right? It is a way of practicing, right? And that's why life is a practice, right? We practice it. And then we also have to be vulnerable, and we have to learn how to communicate, because sometimes, we may do it wrong a couple of times before we get it right. But with practice and apologizing and really communicating what our intention is, like, hey, you know what? I know I probably came off harsh, but I'm really working on establishing my boundary. I'm trying to work on being kind with it, and just taking ownership, right? For maybe the attitude, and not blaming other people for our attitude. It's just like, hey, it's very difficult at this time. I'm setting these boundaries. I see that I get a little anxious when I say that, not in the moment, right? Not in the moment that you're placing a boundary, but as a follow up. Like yesterday, when you called, I was really trying to establish this boundary. My apology, my intention was not to be hurtful. I'm just really working on how to communicate that. It really had nothing to do with you. Like, you can do that. All right, you can do that because it's a practice. All right, it's a practice. You don't have to apologize for setting a boundary, but if you know you was offensive, right? Because we can be kind and be assertive, which is a skill. All right. And you can be loving and still be expansive, which is a skill. And how do we develop these skills? In practice. All right. By practicing. All right. All right. Um, a couple of more things I want you to know: that guilt often masks grief. All right. So a lot of times we're feeling guilty because it's a mask for our grief. Sometimes the grief you feel isn't really guilt, it's unprocessed grief. And I said that I was going to really do something about the grief associated with growth, right? So, grief for what? Grief for who you had to leave behind to grow, all right? Grief for who you used to be, all right? And grief for the relationships that shifted as you healed, you know. I talk about this, like, I had fun in the club, it's something about that old me that still is, it's kind of like, I think that we sensationalize the hood and stuff like that, but it is something about that. Me and my brother talk about it a lot. Like, we grew up in poverty, but it was something fun about that. And it's something that we grieve about that, even though everything about it wasn't to be glorified and wasn't nice. But there is a grieving that happened about leaving that life behind, because we knew it was unhealthy and we knew it wasn't. So, it was unhealthy and it wasn't, it just wasn't healthy, right? So as we grow and as we evolve, the same thing happens, right? There's this grief that comes, okay, that is often not talked about. So it's okay to grieve the loss of an identity. It's okay to grieve the relationships, right? It's okay to grieve old routines while you're still celebrating, though, what you've gained, all right? You can hold on to both. And if you're struggling with that, then that is why we have Project Life. All right. So you can learn how to hold on to both, because again, we can live in the end. We don't have to live in the butt. You can live in the end. All right. A couple of more: internalized roles are real obstacles. So many people are unconsciously fearing, unconsciously trying to be the fixer, the saver, the strong one, right? These roles are really inherited from childhood or from culture. So growth really threatens these roles, right? Because I don't want to be the fixer no more. I don't want to be the savior. I don't want to be the strong one, right? So guilt actually shows up to really keep you in these roles. So what roles were you praised for? That's what you got to ask yourself. What roles was I praised for when I was younger? And what happened if I stopped playing into these roles? Because remember, a big part, and we'll talk about this on Friday, of the identity, right? So if this is something that I was praised for, right, I've internalized this role as being something good. Okay, so if I was praised for being the provider and the savior, and that's what people look in the strong one, and that's what people see me as, and I got to let that go, then know that the brain is saying, hey, that's scary. I don't want to do that. Do we really want to let that go? But if it's a burden, yeah, we want to let that go. All right. And know that freedom requires language. All right. This is another thing I want you to know, that freedom requires language. And I'm big on language. All right. So freedom requires language. So part of your guilt is because you don't know how to explain your new self to others without sounding better than them, too much, or ungrateful. Okay. Let me say that one more time. All right. So a part of the guilt is because you don't know how to explain your new self to others without sounding to yourself like you're better than, like you're too much, or ungrateful. So you silence the joy. All right. So, what I want to empower you to do with your language is say stuff like, I'm growing into peace. All right. This version of me is finally honest. This is a way we can say this, right? I'm just no longer abandoning. I'm not abandoning you. Okay. I'm just honoring myself now. All right. All right. These are the new languages that we can start to incorporate when we start to feel like we're communicating and it's like feeling like I'm saying too much, or maybe I'm being a little ungrateful. It's that second voice that comes in and starts to narrate to you, that inner critic, that makes you start to feel a little guilty. All right. Or that creates a guilt inside of you. And last but not least, someone is waiting for your yes. All right. Someone is waiting for your yes. So your boldness, your joy, and your story of growth is someone else's permission slip. All right. So your wholeness is not selfish, it's service. All right. Because someone is watching you, and as you're growing and as you're evolving, right, you're giving someone else permission to do the same. All right. Listen, guilt is a conditioned response, not a moral compass. Again, so when you internalize guilt as simply growing, you delay your healing and dilute your joy. All right. You're allowed to evolve even if others aren't ready to. All right. I had a client that said, when I finally said yes to myself, I lost some comfort, but I gained so much more clarity. I want you to know that research has showed that those who suppress growth for social acceptance experience higher burnout levels and lower self-worth. And I'm telling you, that is not what you want. All right. That is not what you want. All right. All right. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat for me as we move to the stop it. All right. The stop it framework. We know it's talking about Wednesday. Wednesday is all about obstacles and opportunity cost. All right. And today we're talking about this obstacle, right? Grief is the emotional block that really keeps you from performing instead of progressing. All right. Grief is the emotional block that keeps you performing instead of progressing. So here are 7 truths that I want you to know about obstacles, about opportunity cost, and about grief. All right. Grief is often a sign of identity disruption. All right. So when a person begins to grow financially, emotionally, and spiritually, again, you often feel grief, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're stepping out of familiar identity. All right. Again, opportunity has a cost. All right. Opportunity has a cost, but so does staying stuck. All right. Opportunity has a cost, but so does staying stuck. Every yes to growth might come with a temporary discomfort like disapproval, misunderstanding, and distance. But the real obstacle is pretending you're okay with less just to keep the peace. All right. Guilt is temporary, but regret is expensive. All right. All right. Obstacles aren't always external. All right. I know that we think when we talk about obstacles, we think they're external, but they're not. All right. The biggest block isn't a person, it isn't a job or relationship. All right. It's often this internal guilt that says, who do you think you who do you think you are? All right. Or who do you think you are to want more? All right. This false narrative really keep you stuck in self-sabotaging patterns and feel like loyalty. This false narrative really keeps you stuck in self-sabotaging patterns that feel loyal, but actually limit you. Okay. All right. Listen, I want you to know that guilt thrives where boundaries are weak. All right. All right. So when boundaries are unclear, guilt feels like what? Like betrayal. All right. When boundaries are weak, guilt feels like betrayal. But if your expansion disrupts a dynamic, it's not betrayal, you guys. It is clarification. All right. It is clarification. So when your boundaries are unclear, I'm so sorry. When your boundaries are unclear, growth feels like betrayal. All right, not guilt. I say guilt. So when your boundaries are unclear, growth feels like betrayal. But if your expansion disrupts a dynamic, it's not betrayal, you guys. It's clarification. All right. I want you to also know that joy requires capacity and guilt shrinks it. All right. So joy requires capacity and guilt shrinks it. So when you're weighed down by guilt, you don't have the emotional bandwidth to fully receive joy, abundance, and peace. All right. So gift does not prove love. Presence, honesty, and peace do. All right. So when you're weighed down by guilt, you don't have the emotional bandwidth to fully receive love, abundance, and joy. So you know that joy requires capacity, and guilt shrinks it. So we have to really release the guilt. All right. You can outgrow environments and still be grateful for them. I'm going to say that again. All right. You can outgrow environments and still be grateful for them. And we don't have to judge them as right or wrong. We don't have to judge them as bad or anything because they brought us here. All right. One reason guilt lingers is because we think that leaving something behind means dishonoring it, but really moving forward doesn't mean that you've rejected your past. Okay. It means honoring what it taught you and making room for who you are becoming now. All right. That was a season in your life. All right. When you get through with the first chapter of the book, you don't dishonor the first chapter of the book. You understand that first chapter prepped you for what? For the third chapter. Listen, what came up in my spirit is when you go to watch a Netflix series, right? You go back to the first series because you understand that I just can't watch series 7. Right? I got to go back and watch series 1, series 2, series 3, right? Because I know that it's some in these series that is going to prepare me for what? But it's new series. And when this new series come out, I'm going to binge watch all these series. You ain't dismissing those. All right. You understand that it's importance. All right. But you also understand that each series had to come to a close. And it is same with your life. All right. That there are series in your life that come to a close, and each series brung some lesson, some end, something that you build on for your next series. All right. And we don't have to apologize for that. All right. So you can outgrow an environment and still be grateful for them. Okay. All right. And not everyone will understand. All right. And that's okay. All right. Everyone won't understand, and that's okay. Listen, growth can isolate before it connects. Okay. Growth can isolate before it connects. And I had to learn this the hard way. All right. Growth can isolate before it connects. And it can isolate before it connects you to a new community. Listen, I'm not who I used to be. And that's not a betrayal. It's a blessing. That is an affirmation that you can tell yourself. All right. All right. Because not everyone will understand, and that's okay. And although we want everyone to understand, we probably have shedded a lot of tears and we've questioned ourselves a whole lot, right? Trying to get people to understand. It's not for them to understand. It is for you to, though. And it is your work. All right. All right. And I know that in your mind, you're thinking if they understood, it would make it a little easier for you, but you still got to walk the walk. You know, what's coming up in my spirit is if they understood the math problem, right? So if they understood division, right? Just like you understood division and both of y'all got the same division problem, you still got to work through that division problem, right? You still got to do all the steps of the division problem, whether they understood it or not. But in some way, we feel like if they understand the division problem, then it's going to help me It's going to make the division problem easier for me, and it's not. All right. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, put a 6 in the chat, because them understanding what you were called to be or do, it's not going to make the journey easier for you. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. All right. So even though that's what your mind is telling you, even though that's what your heart is saying, it's a lie, right? It's your comfort zone trying to, and it sometimes is just sophisticated distraction. If I'm using my energy to convince you, it's really just me distracting myself and resisting forward progress and using my energy over here to try to convince you to do something because I might be scared to just move forward on my own. All right. So because I'm moving forward, good morning, Coach Lou. Because I'm scared to move forward on my own, I'm gonna use this energy to try to convince you to do this with me. But I still got to solve the problem for myself. Okay. All right. A couple of more jewels. Normalize the first generation of fatigue. We really need to normalize this. Okay. All right. Listen, you the first, right? You the first to go to therapy. You the first to say no. You the first to choose healing over hustle. All right. With that comes a lot. All right. All right. I want you to know that you're not leaving anybody behind, though. You're leading them. All right. You are the blueprint. All right. So that is not betrayal. All right. That is a new way of living. And you are on the cusp of that. And when you can see it like that, great day, great day. Listen, when you can see it like that, like I'm not leaving them behind, I am actually leading them, and that I am the blueprint and I'm not betraying, then we can shift the energy. All right, we can shift the energy. Another thing is that guilt can mask grief. I told you, talked about this earlier. So when you grow, I want you to know again that you may grieve old identities, unmet expectations, and relationships that can't come with you. All right. All right. So again, we're grieving old identities, unmet expectations. So earlier we grieved something different, but these are a couple of more things that you're going to grieve: old identities, unmet expectations, and relationships that just can't come with you. And it's okay to grieve what you've outgrown, even while you're celebrating where you're going. So Coach Lou is the one who taught me to live in the end, the A and D. All right. All right. Number 3, obstacles can be feedback, not failure. Okay. So sometimes guilt and these internal blocks, they actually reveal what still needs to be healed. So just like I talk about triggers being invitations, obstacles can also be feedback loops. So when I come into this obstacle, maybe instead of judging the person or saying I never get support and what's wrong and nobody never supports me and falling into that type of language, maybe this is a sign that says, oh, you know what? There's some stories in me that I need to update, right? There's some blocks in me that needs to be healing, and maybe this is this is not a sign to stop growing, right? It's a sign to grow with more awareness. All right. And I need to ask, is this guilt protecting the old version of me, or is it an opportunity for me to update the new version of me, the person of me, the person that I'm becoming? All right. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat for me. All right. Spiritual permission matters. All right. Because we are spiritual beings having a human experience, listen, many high-performing people tie their value to sacrifice. I really want you to know that. So the more I feel like I sacrifice, the more then I feel valuable, right? So letting go of guilt often requires the spiritual permission to thrive without apology. All right. All right. He who began a good work in you, again, we're going to talk about that later in our biblical wisdom. This means that God is not confused by your next level. He's initiating it. All right. He's initiating it. All right. And listen, growth is disruption. All right. But so is staying small. Okay. Growth is disrupting, but so is staying small. If you're afraid to ruffle feathers, I want you to know that staying small doesn't keep the peace at all. Actually can create more hostility, more resentment, more sadness, more stillness, more dis-ease, right? Right. And then more delay. Okay. All right. And last but not least, guilt dissolves in safe conversations. All right. So I want to encourage you to speak your guilt out loud. All right. Hiding it is what keeps it powerful. All right. So if you need someone to talk to about the guilt that you're carrying, make sure you get a coach, make sure you get a therapist, or join Project Life, right? So you can start really talking about it, because guilt dissolves in safe conversations and with a different understanding. All right. All right. Um, our um our biblical wisdom for today is, let me see, we're using the same biblical wisdom that we've used all week, which is I gotta make sure I pull it up. All right, so Romans 12:2, do not conform to the patterns of the world, right? So don't conform to the patterns of shrinking to stay relevant, right? You are not made for guilt-based growth. All right. I love you too, Dewana. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. You were not made for guilt-based growth. So you don't have to conform to the patterns of the world. All right. All right. Let me see. All right. So here's how it ties in. So this is not a command to be different. Okay. It is a permission slip to really stop performing for acceptance. All right. The patterns of the world, again, for many people, especially the people that I'm speaking to, is this guilt driven growth. All right. Shrinking to stay palatable or digestible, right? Downplaying success to really avoid what? Jealousy, enviness, right? And know that a lot of that is seeds that was planted in you when you were younger. Okay. So when you were younger, you remember the older lady that would say, she just jealous of you. She jealous of your hair. She jealous of how you, right? So these were seeds that was planted in you when you were younger. All right. So as you got older, right, life started to what? To nurture those seeds. All right. And so we start to downplay, right? Downplay our success to avoid what? The jealousy, those messages that was given to you when you were younger. All right. And then silencing wins to really to not seem like you're what? Too much. And again, if we go back to the stories that you heard when you were little, or in your teenage years, or just, at work or whatever, listen, you don't want to outshine them because they may think, right? These narratives that we're, again, we're not doing them boldly, these little small shifts that we're doing to really play small and shrink. So it's the difference between, being an A student and a B student, but we know that the difference in an A student and a B student is a big difference, right? It's a big difference. All right. All right. So again, this guilt-driven growth, shrinking us stay palatable, downplaying success to avoid jealousy, and silencing wins to not seem like too much. But when this verse says, be transformed by the renewing of your minds, really inviting you to release those subconscious cultural scripts and really rewire your mindset based on truth, not trauma or tradition. Okay. All right. Listen, God doesn't live above your reality. He lives within your growth. So not conforming means honoring the God in you who's called you into wholeness, even if it makes others what? Uncomfortable. All right. All right. And then he who begun, Philippians 1:6, he who begun a good work in you will carry it out. This is our promise verse. We'll carry it out into completion. Listen, you are not done. You are becoming. I'm so sorry. You are not done. You are becoming. You are not done. You are becoming. Not guilt, not guilt. No guilt is necessary. Just grace for your journey. Listen, this verse speaks directly to the process of growth. All right. And guilt tries to interrupt that process a lot. All right. Many people feel like they have to earn the right to change. All right. Or apologize when they grow faster than those around them. But Philippians 1:6 says, you're not done yet. All right. And you don't have to be. You just have to trust that the work that God is already doing, you have to trust the work that God is already doing in you. All right. So when guilt says you're too much, right, this verse is saying you're not even finished yet. Let me say that again. All right. So when guilt is saying, hey, you're too much, you got to know that you're not even finished yet. All right. You're still being shaped. You're still being sharpened. You're still being strengthened. All right. And that same spirit that's initiating your journey is faithful and sustained. All right. It's faithful to sustain it in you. And guess what? It's faithful and sustain it in other people. If they activate it, and that's why you don't have to be guilty about it, right? And you can do it without shame. All right. All right. Because the good work that has begun in you everybody has the ability to activate that. All right. All right. So the same spirit that initiated this journey in you is faithful to sustain it in you, and is also faithful to sustain it in all of us. So I don't have to be shamed about it. All right. All right. And again, I ain't doing too much because I ain't even finished yet. Like this good work that has started in me ain't even done yet. Right. So I don't have to feel ashamed about this. All right. All right. So these scriptures, Coach Lou said, yes, yes, honey, yes. So these scriptures really give us language, right, for liberation, really. Romans 12:2 says, listen, release the guilt-based expectations. And then Philippians 1:6, right, just gives us the grace for the journey, not perfection, right? Not the perfection that's required. So this is the shift from the God out there who really judges, right, who really judges you, to the God within you that is growing, that is growing you. All right. No guilt, just grace, no shrinking, just what? Just rising, you guys. And that's why we're talking about rise on this week. Okay. Or on this month. So let's put it into practice. We just have our journal prompt on this morning. Listen, a journal a list of things that you felt guilty for doing, even if they served your healing. All right. All right. Another prompt that you can use is what's one area where you're shrinking to be digestible? All right. I know for me, if I was to answer that, and this is my ability to communicate, sometimes I probably just don't say everything that I probably could say, that I desire to say. And it's just like, I'm not gonna say that, and maybe I should say a lot more than I'm saying. All right. So, what's one area in your life where you're shrinking to be? And y'all know I say a lot because I get on here every day for an hour, and I always Coach Lou is also my accountability partner. You guys say hi to Coach Lou. So we get on the phone every couple of weeks, and and I'll be telling girl, I mean, I could go, right? She can go too. She has her own practice, and she's a therapist if you're looking for a therapist. She's also a feminine coach, right? She works with the divine feminine and really helping women, right, really tap into their divine feminine. Definitely helped me a lot to really step out my masculine doing into my feminine being. So, Coach Lou, if you want to put your information in the chat, make sure you drop a link. She also worked with firstborn females, being the elder sister. So she's a very beautiful, talented individual. So drop your information in the chat. Just a very resourceful woman. All right. Today's affirmation: my strength is sacred. All right. I release the need, right, to shrink for anyone's comfort. All right. And then today, intention: today I give myself permission to grow without guilt. All right. And then our bonus challenge: celebrate one success out loud today without minimizing it. All right. And then your call, your challenge, and your charge today. I want you to ask yourself, what truth are you walking away with? Okay. Share one thing. That's your challenge. Share one thing that you're no longer apologizing for on this morning. And then your charge is just go shape your life from freedom, not from fear, you guys, not from fear. Listen, if this conversation, right, resonated with you and you're walking away with some insight today, listen, drop a fire in the chat and let's celebrate our growth together. I want you to know that if you can, remember, if you can shape it in your mind, you can have it in your life. Tomorrow, we're talking about it's Energy Audit Thursday. We're talking about patterns, all right, embracing these patterns. I'm excited about that conversation. I love you. I love you. I love you. I'm excited to see you tomorrow for that life lesson. Till later.